Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is dreaming about becoming rich. Not successful, not fulfilled, just rich. Because most people secretly believe money will solve everything. The stress, the anxiety, the pressure, the exhaustion, the feeling of being behind in life. And maybe, for a moment, it would. But here's the terrifying truth nobody talks about. Most people are psychologically unprepared for wealth. And that's exactly why so many people stay broke, even after getting rich. Lottery winners lose millions. Athletes go bankrupt. Celebrities destroy their own lives. People suddenly become rich, and somehow become even more miserable. Why? Because money doesn't change human nature. It reveals it. And if you woke up tomorrow with $1 million, your psychology would determine whether that money multiplies or disappears forever. This video is not about fantasy. It's about human behavior. Because becoming rich and staying rich are completely different psychological games. And by the end of this video, you may realize that wealth is less about money and more about identity. Imagine this. Tomorrow morning, you wake up, check your bank account, and suddenly see $1 million. $1 million. At first, it wouldn't even feel real. Your brain would freeze. Your heart would race. You would probably check the number again and again, because human brains are not designed to process sudden, life-changing events instantly. That's why people scream when they win the lottery. Their nervous system overloads. And in that moment, something dangerous begins. Your identity starts changing immediately, because money changes perception. The way you walk changes. The way you think changes. The way you see the future changes. For the first time in years, survival pressure disappears, and that emotional relief feels addictive. But this is where most people make their first mistake. They confuse emotional excitement with financial intelligence. And emotions create terrible financial decisions. Because suddenly, the brain wants rewards. You deserve it. Buy something. Celebrate. You finally made it. And slowly, discipline disappears. That's how wealth destruction begins. Not through logic, through emotion. Why most people would lose the monkey. Most people believe poverty is caused by lack of money. But often, poverty is caused by financial behavior. That's a painful truth. Because if someone has poor impulse control while broke, they usually keep poor impulse control while rich. The spending simply becomes bigger. A broke person buys cheap dopamine. A rich, irresponsible person buys expensive dopamine. Same psychology, different price tag. That's why so many athletes become bankrupt after earning millions. They upgrade lifestyle faster than mindset. Luxury cars, huge houses, designer clothing, status purchases, attention purchases, emotional purchases, and eventually, the money disappears. Because wealth is not destroyed by one big mistake. It's destroyed by thousands of emotional decisions. Small leaks, repeated daily, subscriptions, luxury habits, impulse spending, status addiction, lifestyle inflation. And the scariest part? Most people don't even notice it happening. Because modern culture teaches people to look rich instead of build wealth. There's a massive difference between the two. Human beings crave status. Always have. That's why social media became so powerful. Because it transformed attention into currency. People don't only want money anymore. They want visible success, recognition, validation, envy. And once someone suddenly becomes rich, the temptation becomes dangerous. Because now they can finally prove themselves. To friends, to family, to strangers, to the world. But status spending is psychological poison. Because the more people buy for validation, the emptier they secretly feel. That's why luxury never satisfies insecure people permanently. The excitement fades. then the brain needs another purchase, another upgrade, another dopamine hit, another symbol of success. And eventually, people become trapped inside an endless cycle of consumption, trying to fill emotional emptiness with material stimulation. But emotional insecurity cannot be solved through spending. That's why some millionaires still feel miserable. Because money can buy comfort, but it cannot buy internal peace. The most dangerous thing about money is not greed, it's illusion. Because money creates the illusion of intelligence. Suddenly, everyone feels smarter, safer, more powerful, and confidence without wisdom becomes dangerous. That's why people make reckless investments after getting rich. They think money automatically made them financially intelligent. But wealth amplifies who you already are. If you are disciplined, wealth amplifies discipline. If you are impulsive, wealth amplifies impulsiveness. If you are insecure, wealth amplifies insecurity. Money doesn't create character, it exposes it. And the people who survive wealth long-term usually have something rare: emotional control. Not luck, not talent, emotional control. Because real wealth management is psychological management. Poor people often think money is for spending. Rich people often think money is for building systems. That psychological difference changes everything. Average people see money as temporary pleasure. Wealthy people see money as a tool, a worker, an employee, something that can generate more money. That's why wealthy people obsess over assets, businesses, stocks, real estate, ownership, cash flow, leverage. Because rich people understand something powerful. Money becomes dangerous when it sits still, and powerful when it moves intelligently. That's why many wealthy people look boring. They don't chase constant stimulation. They don't need to prove wealth every day. Because real wealth often grows quietly, silently, without attention, without applause. That's something social media never teaches. If I suddenly received $1 million tomorrow, the first thing I would not do is tell people. Because attention changes relationships. Fast. People treat rich people differently. Some become jealous. Some become fake. Some suddenly become supportive. Money reveals people. That's why silence becomes valuable. The second thing I would do is disappear emotionally for a while. No massive purchases. No dramatic lifestyle changes. No emotional decisions. Just silence. Because sudden money creates psychological instability. The brain becomes emotional. And emotional brains make terrible long-term decisions. Then, I would focus on one thing: protecting the money first, not multiplying it. Protection comes before growth. Because people obsess over getting rich, but rarely think about staying rich. And staying rich requires patience. Why people stay trapped even after success? Most people think, once I get money, I'll finally feel free. But freedom is psychological, not financial. There are wealthy people trapped by anxiety, trapped by ego, trapped by addiction, trapped by comparison, trapped by attention. Because external success cannot fix internal chaos. That's why some people become rich, yet still feel empty. The problem was never only financial. It was emotional. And modern society keeps people emotionally distracted constantly. Notifications, social media, comparison, consumerism, noise, constant noise. Because distracted people spend more money. Emotionally unstable people are easier to manipulate. That's why self-awareness became rare. And rare awareness creates rare outcomes. One of the biggest mistakes people make after becoming rich is upgrading life too quickly. Bigger apartment, luxury car, expensive vacations, designer clothing, high-status lifestyle. And suddenly, their monthly expenses explode. Now they need massive income just to maintain appearance. That's the trap. Because lifestyle inflation silently destroys freedom. The more expensive life becomes, the harder freedom becomes. That's why some people earning $50,000 feel peaceful, while some earning $500,000 feel trapped. Because wealth is not income. Wealth is control. Control over time. Control over stress. Control over decisions. And many wealthy-looking people secretly have no control at all. Only expensive pressure. Money's greatest power is not luxury. It's options. The ability to say no. The ability to leave toxic environments. The ability to rest. The ability to think clearly. The ability to spend time with loved ones. The ability to protect peace. That's real wealth. Not social media attention. Not fake flexing. Not impressing strangers online. Because eventually, all external validation becomes exhausting, and people realize something important. Peace feels better than attention. Freedom feels better than status. And time feels more valuable than money. Why most people never become wealthy? Most people never become wealthy because they are trained to consume, not build. School teaches obedience. Advertising teaches insecurity. Social media teaches comparison. And modern culture rewards distraction. That's dangerous, because distracted people rarely build extraordinary lives. Focus became rare. Patience became rare. Discipline became rare. And rare behaviors create rare outcomes. The people who eventually build wealth usually think long-term, years ahead, not weekends ahead. They sacrifice temporary dopamine for permanent freedom. That psychological ability changes lives. Nobody talks about this, but success can become lonely, because once someone changes financially, their mindset changes, their priorities change, their habits change, and suddenly, they no longer relate to the same conversations. That's why many ambitious people feel isolated. Not because they hate people, because growth changes identity, and identity changes environment. That's why protecting mindset matters so much, because eventually, environment shapes destiny. If you got $1 million tomorrow, your future would not depend on the money. It would depend on your psychology, your discipline, your emotional control, your ability to resist ego, your ability to think long-term. Because wealth without self-control becomes destruction, and self-control without wealth eventually creates opportunity. That's the real secret nobody teaches. The strongest people are not always the smartest, or the luckiest, or the richest. They are the people who can control themselves, their impulses, their attention, their emotions. Because in modern society, attention became currency, discipline became rare, and emotional control became power. $1 million can change your life, but only if your mind changes first. Otherwise, money disappears, and the cycle begins again. So the real question is not, what would you buy if you became rich? The real question is, who would you become? Because wealth doesn't only change lifestyle, it changes identity, and identity changes destiny.